Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our talk today. Good morning if you're out in the West Coast. I think it's still 11 o'clock out there. So we are having our second series on sexuality and sex. And I'd like to thank Emily, our new, I'm not sure exactly her title, coordinator, director. We have Julie as well, and the foundation for supporting our my webinar. Technically, I think these monthly educational information is really critical in success for people with disability, as well as for myself. We are. I'm gonna do a disclaimer today. Is that this topic can be sensitive and graphic at times, maybe. So please, if you have children and you don't want hearing about this topic, put your AirPods on and hearing devices on so that you can only hear this. We're not going to be showing anything visually. We're just going to be talking about it today. So, but thank you for coming on today, everyone. Please. Those of you who have individuals with spinal cord injury or paralysis, we're going to try to broaden our talks more on paralysis in the near future. Please invite your friends. And at the end of our podcast, make sure you evaluate us and give us some feedback, because we like to know that we're doing a good job and want to continue to do a good job for the near future. So today, a couple of little things I'd like to quick introduce. We're going to talk about sex, and not the relationship part. And we had last week Billy and Christine, they were awesome. They talked about how their relationship and how their disability paralysis impact their relationship from the emotional relationship process. Today, it's a little different. First, I'd like to say a little prayer as a friend of mine who was a spinal cord injured individual for 40 some years. He recently just passed away, and a good friend of mine, and it's in my thoughts, and I lost a good support. So I might have to use some of the guests that are on today to be part of my inner circle, because it's important that individuals like us who have good support. So you're in my thoughts there, Dominique. So one of the things that came up in as a professor at a university is this thing, a recent artificial intelligence. So I wanted to share with you a little bit. I typed in sex and spinal cord injury on this artificial intelligence called ChatGPT. And here's my intro for you. And this was written from ChatGPT. So I didn't even write this, but I typed in sex and spinal cord injury, and it came out. Spinal cord injury have a significant impact on sexual function, both for men and women. Spinal cord plays an important role in sexual response. Damage to the spinal cord can lead to changes in sexual sensation, arousal, and functioning. For men, spinal cord injury can cause erectile dysfunction, as well as difficulty achieving and maintaining an erection. Ejaculation also may be affected, as nerves responsible for triggering ejaculation are located in the spinal cord. Some men are also experiencing changes in intensity and the quality of the orgasm. For women, spinal cord injury can affect vaginal lubrication and sensation, as well as ability to achieve orgasm. Women may also experience changes in fertility, menstrual cycle, and bladder control. However, it is important to note all individuals with spinal cord injury experience sexual dysfunction, and there are many effective treatments available for those who do. These can include medications for ED, assisted devices for sexual stimulation, and counseling therapy address psychological or emotional factors related to sexual functioning. Now, so, that was written by a computer with somewhat of a artificial brain. I was amazed at that it was written as. So this is not a talk about that, but I just wanted to share with you that was something that was interesting that was running through being a college professor. So I remember way back, now we're talking about way back with me, when they gave us, wow, it was, I was at McGee Rehab. It was a Wednesday, I believe it was a Wednesday or a Thursday at 1 o'clock. And I remember it being crowd into our usual room full of individuals. It was a mixed group. I don't remember too many women at that time in that group, and it was our educational group course, and they presented that it was a talk on sex education. Right away, they put a video in. We watched a video of a couple. It was a male individual who was disabled. I remember that there were no intercourse being seen on the video. It was a lot of foreplay, some oral sex, and that was it. That was the entire sex education for. I mean, there was discussion at the end, of course, with us, all of us individuals with spinal cord injury. And I remember what I thought about that was like, wow, that is my future, and this is all it is. That was it, really. There was not a lot of discussion about it. Not a lot of mentorship from individuals who had been out in the real world to come in and tell us how the reality of the life was going to be. Maybe most of us were still focusing on just wanting to walk, and maybe the sexuality relationship part wasn't a priority. But once you're out in the real world, it becomes a priority. And based on our research, 90% of, well, 70% of 19-year-olds are sexually active, able-bodied, 70% of 19-year-olds. By the time you're 24, approximately 90% of young adults are sexually active. So it's a very important process of living. It's an important process of quality of life. And as I start my journey down to reliving life, I realized I had no idea what I was doing. It's not like there's something you can locate, maybe on the internet. There's probably more. I believe there's probably more resources. I believe that there are more time spent on it now. When I did a little research, being a professor, I did a little research on it. I said, what is a big common scenario for now with sexual rehab education? And the comment was that it's very male oriented. Well, hello, it's mostly male in spinal cord injury, but it's not all of us, but it's very male oriented. And for couples who are married at the time, then they had the injury, they said that one, there wasn't very much opportunity to have privacy. You're in a hospital, you have multiple people in the same room, or even if you're not, even if you had a private room, you have nurses coming in and out, staff coming in and out. So one of the main complaints was lack of privacy. And two, if there was some privacy, there was lack of availability of location to do anything. So the hospital is not set up for it. It's definitely in the minds of couples. But today, the nice part about today's talk is that we're going to have two individuals who are going to come and talk about their experiences. And we're going to have, so we have Clint, who's from Atlanta, Georgia. He's a C5 incomplete quad due to a car accident as far back as I do, Clint, 1988. He's the founder member of the Atlanta quad rugby team. If you ever seen that movie Murder Ball, he's an active SCI community. He continues to help others through peer support, mentoring people new to spinal cord injury. Clint, thank you. Welcome. And then we also have Beth. Beth had a sustained a result of a car crash. She's married for 20 years. She has 4 children. Well, I wonder how old are your children? How old are they, Beth?
My oldest is 17 and my youngest is 12.
Okay. Wow. So she's got them through the teenage years. She's passionate about creating intentional space. I know she spoke at for the medical students, a bunch of them for over and over again, she said, multiple groups. And she's gonna have our conversations about sexual health and disabled womanhood. So different perspectives, same category. Welcome, both of you.
Thanks, John.
And
Thanks.
so, yeah, and listeners, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I have my assistant Keels here, and she's going to help me coordinate that, and we'll try to get them answered either during the talk or at the end of our talk. So I'll begin with Clint a little bit. Clint, tell me a little bit about your disability. What can you can't do right now, like physically?
Okay, so C5 incomplete. I do have full sensation, head to toe, a little spotty on the backside of my arms. I do have some function of fingers on my left side. No function at all, no tricep on the right side, pretty much classic C5, C6 on the right side. I do have some leg function on the left side. Not, I'm 55 years old now. I've been injured for 35 years and nothing works the same as it did, when we were first injured. So very limited on anything I can do besides be in a manual wheelchair.
Yeah, I know. So you're still in the manual wheelchair, which I'm so jealous, Clint. But has that worn your shoulder down now over the years?
Yeah, I played sports for a long time, rugby and tennis, and I was I was 20 years old when I was injured, and I was still kind of a roughneck. I still lived a little bit of a rough life. It took me years to get out of that, to grow out of that kid in me. But I mean, all in all, I'm healthy. My body does creak a little bit, and I do feel some tightness and a little bit of pain in my shoulders, but it hasn't gotten to the point that I felt like I needed to see a specialist or anything yet.
Okay, great. I'm still jealous that you're still in a manual chair.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm a car guy, so I want to stay in the manual chair as long as I can.
Yeah, it would be hard to drag an electric chair into the car, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, Beth, tell us a little bit about your physical limitations.
So I am an L1 burst fracture and I'm incomplete. So I do have function in my legs and above the knees, just some with that. And I'm able to urinate. And
whoa. And now I'm really jealous.
but it's a lot different than what it was. And also some bowel movement function. But again, completely different. I have huge amounts of neuropathic pain. Okay. And so that's the main issue. is the pain.
So, so just so or some of our speakers understand. So you have both your hands are normal, correct? Can I say that?
Yes.
Okay, so you're L1. So you're more considered a paraplegic incomplete, correct?
That's correct.
And Clint and I are more quadriplegic, but Clint is a more functional quadriplegic. Did you say you're an incomplete or complete, Clint?
Incomplete, yep. With
Okay,
and
so
functional on one side.
okay, so incomplete meaning part of the spinal cord is severed or impaired, and so Clint is using a manager where I use electric chair, and I'm a complete. And so tell me, so I'm gonna just throw it out there in a broad category. How has and who wants to go first? How has sexuality been, sex itself, and for both of you over these years? And maybe I'll start with Beth. You just recently had your talk, Beth. What was the main point of your talk about the sex part of
Probably, well, first of all, just realizing that there's so many misconceptions about women, especially with spinal cord injury. Many times they think they just sew us up down there, so we're not able to have sex. We don't have a menstrual cycle anymore. And it hasn't been so long ago that there was sterilization and institutionalization. So those are just, there's still a lot of old thinking out there, especially pertaining to women with spinal cord injuries or disabilities in general.
Can you tell me what those main myths or thoughts that have been out there, in a sense, that are still pervasive right now?
That we're not able to have sex because the doctor sewed us up. We don't have a menstrual cycle anymore, and we cannot get pregnant.
Okay, so women can get pregnant even though they're paralyzed. Women still have a menstrual cycle, and women can still have intercourse.
Yes, and we can still give birth naturally. So that's another misconception, is that we must have a C-section. If we do get pregnant, we won't be able to deliver the baby naturally, but we can.
You can,
and we do.
So not only do you still have to be cautious of not getting pregnant if you are not intending to get pregnant, even though it might have changed, you still have to be cautious of that. And of course, you can still catch STDs, right?
Of course.
I mean, that is irrelevant if you're paralyzed or not, right? So
That's
you
right.
still have all the precautions that you used to do prior to your injury. So, and Clint, what are some of the major factors of sex have you gone through in your experience, and that is like the forefront of what you want to share with our listeners today?
So my experience was a lot like yours, injured in 1988. You and I probably saw the same video, that 1970s video of that quad being kind of moved around by this lady and in and out of his chair. And when you were talking about that, I remember that class like it was yesterday at Shepherd 35 years ago. I don't remember the day and the time like you do, because your memory obviously is better than mine, but I do remember, or I can't remember, that there were any females in that meeting. I know the doctor was a male. I remember there was an older guy in there, myself and a couple other people, and it might have been all guys, because like we've talked about, this spinal cord injuries, it's mainly guys, and especially in the mid and late 80s, it was almost all guys. I remember one female in rehab 35 years ago. I remember being, while I was still, before I even got to rehab, I was at a general hospital, and I can remember the doctor telling me, that I'm probably never going to walk again because of my spinal cord injury. And my first two questions was, will I be able to drive and will I be able to have sex? And it probably wasn't in that order. You know, I was 20 years old, you know? So after seeing that video at Shepherd, I was almost the same way. I was like, oh my God, that's what I have to look forward to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I thought, wow, that is like worst video I've ever seen. And it gave me no hope.
No hope at all. It was terrible. And back then, I don't know how it was at McGee, but peer support wasn't a big thing. I mean, there were still guys around, but it wasn't like it was set up. Like individuals were not set up to come into your room and spend an hour like I do today. So there was no discussion about it besides that class. And the unknown is so scary. You know, you just, that really horrified me. Getting home, I was lucky enough to have an incomplete injury, so I do have sensation, you know, in that area, and it was a learning experience to be able to get an erection, maintain an erection, and have an orgasm. Felt like at the time out of the question. You know, I tried everything known to man, and it just wouldn't happen. You know, and then as a young male, as shallow as it is as a young male, that's what it was all about. You know, it wasn't about feelings, and obviously that's changed now as an adult. But back then, it was kind of just about sex. You know. And what we were going to get out of it, you know, the two partners. I am single at 55. I have been married. I've been divorced and a couple of times. And I think we've talked about that in the relationship side of discussions. So as a single individual out there in the dating world, it's, even though it was shallow at 20 years old, even as an adult dating at 55 years old and dating women that are in their 50s, it's still one of the very first questions. After they know right away that I'm in a wheelchair. They either see me in person or my dating profile is, you know, I show my wheelchair right away. I have nothing to hide about my disability. And, it's, hey, you know, hey, I'm Linda. Nice to meet you. I live here. Do we live close? Blah, 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 a little bit of small talk. And within 2 or 3 conversations, it comes up. You know, it's like, well, you know, how is sex for you? So it's still very important at any age. It doesn't matter how old we are.
And that shows how important sex is for people throughout lifespan. I mean, it is. I mean, research does show that even older people have sex. So it is. You know, geriatric people have sex, so it is a important part. And Clint, I do hear a lot of what you're saying is that is how, you know, we have gone through our educational process. There wasn't much back there then when we went through it back in the 80s. And Beth, how was your education for you? You know, I know you do a lot of education. There you go. So. You're a big fat 0.
That's right. I was in rehab for brain injuries and for behavior issues. So they got the insurance to pay for it and the doctors to recommend it because brain injuries are the same as spinal cord injuries, right? Just no big deal. Right. So I had no education. I mean, no education about spinal cord injury, anything. No education about bowel and bladder, no education, and definitely no education about sex. My husband would crawl into the hospital bed with me so that we could at least be next to each other and snuggle. But we didn't know what that was going to be like. And when I got home from rehab, I mean, it was a mess. I mean, it wasn't until probably, I'd say about 8 months ago, that we're like excited. This is an adventure and we're figuring this out better and better and better, and things are getting faster. But I mean, it would take 3 to 5 hours before, I mean, he could even penetrate me. And now, you know, like we get there. And so for rehab, there was nothing. So we were both coming out of nothing. And then when I went, my husband had gotten a huge manual, or a huge book on spinal cord injuries. And so I was so excited. We moved from Texas to Pennsylvania. I had finally, my pain had receded just a little bit. And so I was like reading this, and I was like researching about women with spinal cord injuries, and how sex would work, or, you know, so some advices and things like that. And this book is this thick, and there is not one thing about sexual health or intercourse or anything like that pertaining to women. For men there is, but nothing on women. And so I was like, man, surely there's got to be something on the internet. So I looked on the internet. This not hard. I mean, there's nothing, like hardly anything. So I was like, I'm going to ask my physical therapist, you know, what are some things that I can do? Because I'm incomplete and I'm a lower injury. My vagina is open. When people, from my understanding, from when people have higher injuries, the vagina is closed and a lot tighter. So I was looking for research on how that maybe I could make my vagina tighter so that I could please my husband. Couldn't find anything. There's nothing on there.
I think there's a surgery for that, Beth.
Yeah. So I looked, you know, and I'm trying to figure out all of this. And so there was like a lot of research that I did and questioning. And I just experimented and experimented and experimented.
So you were lack of education. Clint, there is a little bit more information on our end of the neck, but was that available really for us, or was that available around your circle? Because I know you do a lot of mentoring now with the younger injury.
Everything that I learned about sexuality was after rehab, after I connected with other guys in chairs that had been injured for 10 plus years. Before leaving rehab, literally the only thing was that one class with that one video. There was no, back in the 80s, so late 80s, Viagra wasn't a thing yet. So ED wasn't, there was nothing to address ED besides a pump or, getting something actually inserted into your penis,
Right. I know for males, you either use a pump or an implant, right? They call it an implant.
Like prosthetic, yep. So that was a common thing. I didn't ever even look into the prosthetic side, and being an incomplete injury and young, I was still able to get an erection, not maintain it, for a long time. So the ED part of it was never ever addressed, never ever. And then several years later, I was introduced to an injectable medication called prostaglandin, which is injected into the side of the penis, and that was a game changer. Like that was like it would give me the confidence of I never had a problem like meeting people and engaging and dating, that kind of stuff. But when it came to sex, it was like, man, I don't perform like I think I should. I should be able to. And then after the being educated on prostaglandin, the injectable, it was a game changer. Yeah, I had the confidence at the time, and then the ability to, lack of better terms, to be able to follow up.
Clint, you just reminded me. One of the jokes we used to say to, being a quadriplegic, we used to say to the paraplegics that, they had a harder time getting erection because of where they had their injury. So we used to tease them. in the
Sure.
rehab, of course.
Oh,
You got a bunch of guys, we gotta tease them because being a quad, we had nothing. So the parents had to be teased about something.
yeah.
But then they used to go to the doctor, the urologist, and come back with the injectable.
Mm.
And they'd be like, hey, dude, look what we have. And I'm like, yeah. And how long is that gonna last? They're like hours. I'm
Yeah.
like, that can cause problems if you have that for way too many hours. So but the injectable was the game changer for me because sexual dysfunction, there's the interest and then there's the response,
Sure.
so the erection. So many spinal cord injury individuals can't keep the erection long enough to have a normal intercourse. Now, Beth, as the natural response, a lot of women with spinal cord injury don't get lubrication. Is that, that is part of the struggle for many. Am I correct to say that, or is that not an issue?
So that's not an issue for me. I know it could be an issue for other women who have higher injuries or if they're complete, but that's not an issue for me. So my issue is more of that it is so painful. And so overcoming that pain mentally, and keeping that in check and balance. And I kind of compare it like there's no really a quickie when you have a spinal cord injury. There's no, it's like going on a quick hike. When you go on a quick hike, you just, grab an apple, a granola bar, and your phone, and off you go. And, you don't think anything of it.
You're absolutely right.
And with spinal cord injury, it's an adventure. It's an expedition. And for expeditions, we have to plan. And one of those things we do is we map out our bodies. We say, hey, just like you would go on an expedition, you'd have a map. You would map out your body, and you would say, hey, what things work well, what things are painful, where can my partner touch, what provides okay stimulation, what's okay to maneuver, and then how to overcome at least some of that pain through excitement, because we can overcome pain through heightened sexual interest. And so it's just working with that and playing around with that and having the time to be able to do that has been really crucial for me. But yeah, I don't have that problem with lubrication. In fact, I'm totally fine with that. So my husband's like, oh, well, you're wet, so let's go. I'm like, no. And that's true with even able-bodied people, where their partner is like, well, you're wet, so then therefore you must be ready to have sex. And that's, of course, not even true for able-bodied people, an able-bodied woman. So that's just something to keep in mind and to work with and to navigating that expedition.
Yeah, I mean, one of the themes from last month's talk was communication was a key in the relationship process. I mean, Clint, Beth, and I'll go back to Clint here. Do you see communication as a key part in enjoying sex?
So for me, I think the communication is more of a so when I come into a new relationship and then sex is sex is on the table, let's say we're not having sex yet, but we know probably where it's headed. I will start having conversations about my spinal cord injury, how I can get an erection but not keep it. So I use an injectable. So I'm always upfront with individuals that I'm that close with. I will talk about how positioning is for me. Having an incomplete injury and having a little bit of leg function, I am not limited to just laying on my back. Any other position is a lot of work, which takes away from the fun for me a little bit. On my side is good, but I will explain this to my partner. it's going to be better for both of us if we do it this way. And then once the relationship evolves a little bit, generally I'll say, look, let's start experimenting a little bit, with me getting on top, or, just trying different things, oral sex, that kind of stuff is, for me, is a very big deal. Giving oral sex and receiving, but mostly giving. That's one thing that, we used to always joke about too, is, we might not be able to get an erection, but, you learn to do things with your mouth that most able bodies haven't ever learned how to do. I mean, it's just part of it,
So I mean, again, this is I really appreciate your honesty. I really appreciate you really just putting it out there for us, because there's such a taboo to talk about sex, and I'm so grateful that you're willing to share with us these practical concepts. And oral sex is a big facet of our life, and as you both agree with that, right, Beth, as well?
Yes. I just after I got injured, I was not interested in sex, just because just touching hurts. I mean, me touching myself hurts. And I enjoyed, of course, orgasming, and I could, orgasm 10 times, and just within 2 minutes, or in 45 seconds, another orgasm. And and then I lost all of that. And I'm still not able to orgasm yet. But there's more to sex than just intercourse. There's more to sex than having an orgasm. And it's that relational part. It's enjoying sex in different ways, doing oral sex, doing, my kid is texting me.
Yeah, Mom, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm on a webinar right now, right?
Yeah. Giving oral sex was just something that really didn't happen in our marriage. And exploring different things. Before my injury, I was ultra conservative. So that plays a portion in how that relationship works or doesn't work. And so introducing, things like, nipple stimulation. I mean, I had no idea how fun that is. I'm like, I've been missing out this whole time. My able-bodied self has been missing out because I didn't want my nipples touched or my breast touched. And, this is the only way we can do it. And the only way we can. And so all of these other things came to play. Can you introduce pornography to sex? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on the couple. And one of the advantages that I have is that I have a wonderful, caring husband who we've been in a long-term relationship, and not every woman gets to have that. Shut my door, please. And I get to have that relationship already established. And then now we get to build on it and build on it and build on it and build on it. So communication is more of like, hey, I'm at a -5. My body is cold. I need like 15 minutes to be able to warm up, and then we'll go from that. We even set a timer to say, let's try this in 7 minutes. And so that's helpful. And then he'll try to touch me, and I'll be like, oh no, not yet. Like, do this instead. And so there's a lot of conversation that has to go on in that thing. And I'm not used to telling my husband what to do, because he knows my body. He's known my body forever. And now all of a sudden he doesn't know it. And so it's frustrating. So that communication aspect has been really important. And sometimes, we have sex, we have intercourse, and then other times it's orally, and other times it's a combination. And then lots of times we discover something new, and it's like, oh, this is so cool. I can't wait to start this next time or do this again. And right now we're discussing bringing a third person into it. Or going to sexual therapy. These are things I would never, ever had even thought of to do for an able-bodied marriage. And it would work for an able-bodied marriage, maybe. So these are all, I mean, it's just really an expedition.
Yeah, I mean, you said conservatism will not or would interfere with the process of enjoying sex.
Yes, John, I do. To answer your, I do. Yeah.
And so I mean, it's such a beautiful contrast right now, because here, Beth, you know, you are in a committed marriage, 20 years, 4 children, you know, and Clint, you know, you're in a what I would say investigating newly, you know, interested people, right? And you're in a whole different realm.
Or you could just say I'm out there running the streets, however you want to say it, John.
Clint is running the streets right now and communicating with others on his process. And, you know, again, it's, you know, when I'm thinking of Clint's side, you're saying we have injectable, we have the Viagra, you know, we have some medicine, we have chemicals. Beth, I'm not aware of any chemicals out there that's on your side right now, right? There's not.
No.
Yeah.
So, and I think too, like, for women, it's so important that we're safe. Like, we feel like we're safe in a safe things. We could be doing risque, you know, crazy things, but to have that safe environment actually allows us to explore and to do all these things, even if there isn't, you know, medical interventions. I mean, you talked about surgery. No way.
No
Absolutely
way.
not. That's not happening on me. And there should be medicine. There should be things that we could do. There should be, you know, conversations that we can have. But even in the able-bodied world for women, you know, it's that those conversations don't happen. It's all about the male. And then that transfers over into spinal cord injuries, because the majority of people that have spinal cord injuries are men. So we're dealing with all of these things. So it's really just us talking to each other, saying, you know, hey, does this work for you? Hey, does that work for you? You know, how do you do this? How do you handle this? But I think the number one thing for women is that they feel safe, and they're in a safe relationship, so that they can let their guard down, that they can be exposed. Right. Men have no problem being exposed, you know, for the most part, just whip it out. Women are a little bit, you know, generally, able-bodied and disabled women are a little bit more, you know, clothed. And I mean, guys walk out of the shower, you know, no problem. You know, and women are like, what do you see us with? A robe, you know, a towel wrapped around us. So, you know, being able to be in a safe relationship allows us to be exposed, allows us to, you know, be completely exposed, and to be able to have better discussions and better intimacy.
No, Clint, it's you know, Beth is creating a whole new perspective that, you know, we don't think about often, because as men, we're just talking about, you know, in our small groups, we talk about, can we do it, and can we perform, and can we, you know, ejaculate? That is our emphasis, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. I mean, even in the spinal cord injury support groups out there on Facebook, the hot topic between men, and there are very specific Facebook groups out there that are just for men, and there are some that are just for women. But one of the very hot topics is, how do I get an erection? How do I maintain it? And how do I ultimately have an orgasm? I see that conversation not just daily, but several times a day. And that is, for males, our emphasis. You know, I mean, it's like, how do you get an erection? Well, I use Viagra, or I use an injection. Okay, how do you have an orgasm? Well, I can't ever have an orgasm, or I have found using a vibrator in a certain area on my penis is where I have best results in having an orgasm. Like I was talking about earlier, when I was first injured and coming home, being able to have an erection but not being able to have an orgasm was difficult, no matter how much I tried with a what I would call just a regular standard vibrator. or masturbating in a traditional way, I got zero results as far as being able to have an orgasm. And then one of my buddies years later said, hey, there's a medical vibrator on the market called a FertiCare that is designed for males with spinal cord injuries. And it is, I'll use the term again, a game changer. And come to find out, I can still have an orgasm, not during intercourse, and not even with traditional masturbation, but with this vibrator, I can have an orgasm literally almost every time I want to. No, let's. If I want to once a day, if it were every time I wanted to, I wouldn't ever leave the house. But yes. So I can have an orgasm with this every time I use it. So that is pretty much what we talk about in the men's world.
So again, it sounds like at least some of the orgasm processes has changed. I would say I'd be lying if it has somewhat of a, not like it used to be. I think Beth even mentioned that it's different, or it's difficult to achieve anymore. And Clint, you would argue that it's definitely not the same like you had prior to your injury.
100%.
Even if it's an orgasm, it's different. It's it's impaired. It's not as good. So in shifting gears a little bit here on, and I wanted to talk for a little bit more, and then we'll maybe address some questions down when we have an opportunity to see what the questions are for our listeners. But last month, again, we talked about the importance of communication. And today you even talked about it's as important to communicate and trust. Beth, there's not enough out there for women. You almost said, and I'm trying to make sure I say it right, is that sex is not just about the intercourse. It's not just about the organ. It's a lot of different little parts. And maybe we can capitalize on some of those parts or many of those parts, but not all of the parts. Can I say that? And that not everything's going to come back 100%. And I'm going to guess no matter what reading you do and what different things, you're just going to focus on the areas that you can actually be interested and feel good about.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's different for each person. I mean, just like when we get newly injured, we're like, oh, we're going to walk again. I'm going to walk again. And if I put enough effort, enough power in it, I'm going to be able to walk again. And that might be true, but it's usually not. And if it is true a little bit, it's not going to be fully true. And it's just experimenting. I mean, that's really, I wish I could have an orgasm, right? And part of it, part of the crash was that it wasn't my fault. It was somebody else's fault. And they didn't just take away my ability to walk. They took away so much more than that.
Yes.
And they took away my ability to orgasm. And that's something that you just don't think about when you're driving. Like, I could take away somebody's ability to have an orgasm. I could take away somebody's husband's enjoyment, sexual enjoyment, by being selfish. And it's just something that that when you're driving, you don't think about, of course not. And, but there's other ways to achieve emotional orgasm and mental orgasm. And I think even positioning, it really helps me when I'm on my side. There's other things that I can do just because I'm a lower injury. So I can do all the positions that I did before, but it takes a little bit of work and it takes a little bit of patience. And then during that transition time, right? You lose that momentum. So how do you get it back? And maybe you don't. So then it's like, okay, for next time, how do I go from here to here? And so it's puzzle making, it's puzzle designing, really, making your own puzzle and then putting it together and then taking it apart and then, reconfiguring it. And it's really a lot of mental work, more than it is the actual physical work of doing things. And just switching things up. Sometimes they don't work.
Right.
The other day, my husband said, I want you to tell me what to do. I'm not going to do anything until you tell me what to do. And I just freaked out. I was like, you know my body. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. He's like, okay, it's okay. Well, now everything has just gone down. I mean, I was at at a level 2 and now I'm back at 0. So now we have to build that back up. And if you don't have the time and you don't have the purpose, you don't have the energy and you don't have that relationship, something like that could be devastating to a woman where a guy's just like, all right, we'll just have sex, and it's not like that for a woman for the most part. I mean, some women are definitely built like that and that's fine. But I think just really understanding that we need to have a safe place and building that safe place and building that environment.
Clint, in hearing Beth talk about the somewhat complexity of sex for us, I thought the emotional part last month was complex, but sometimes it seems like even this month I'm hearing that it is somewhat complex. What do you say to a young person when you're out there peer mentoring and they're asking you about, hey, man, can I have sex? What are you going to say? Because you don't want to blow their bubble here. You don't want to give up their hope of anything, but what do you say to them?
So it's the same thing when you, as a mentor, you get the question a lot, or you'll hear statements a lot about walking. And it's like Beth said, we, the first several months of our injury, we're gung ho, and we're going to be that 1% or 3% that get up and walk out of the rehab center. And turns out that we're not. And in my mentoring and peer support efforts, I never would take away that hope and that faith of someone. And in the same way with the sex question is, you've got to find, we're all individuals, you and I can both have a C5 incomplete level of injury and still have totally different function. So we have to learn our bodies first before we can start trying to teach others the best way to approach us. So it's a lot of self-exploration to start off with. Like I've talked about a couple of times coming home from rehab and trying to masturbate or masturbating. It's a lot about learning yourself. Beth touched on some positioning and the pieces of the puzzle. I know my body well enough to know how I can almost have a normal sex life. Like I know I can get into bed and I can have and perform foreplay and provide my partner with safety and comfort at the same time. And then get in one position, switch to another position, and it almost feel like it was when I was 19 years old, able-bodied, as opposed to when I'm 55 years old with a spinal cord injury. Now, when the relationship gets deeper and there's more time spent, there is that transition part where you want to change positions. And it does take more time. Like if I want to get on my knees, I struggle. Like I have to hang on to my partner and push up with one arm and you lose that, like Beth said, you lose that momentum and it takes a little bit of time to get that back. So in my mindset, what I will do is instead of going to that position during sex, I will start at that position and then move into a position that I'm more comfortable with. So it does feel more natural. And like my partner's not having sex with someone that has a spinal cord injury. So that's what I tell individuals with new injuries, is that trying to make it as natural as possible will make it more enjoyable for both of you. And the only way to be able to do that is to know your own body.
Mhm. So, you know, in some of this comes with some self-esteem and confidence. I'm biased. Everybody needs to be in therapy if you want to get there. It's hard to get there without some help. I have gotten so many emails about, you know, where can I find an individual who works with spinal cord injury? And I'm going to say that is a hard thing to find. There's not a lot of therapists that focus specifically on rehab areas. So check your state associations, and check the American Board of Professional Psychologists. Hopefully you'll be able to find someone in your state. Now, with some professionals now being able to go cross state lines and do video, so there may be opportunities to find someone to consult across state lines. I have privileges in 27 states, but I'm not doing a lot of rehab across state lines right now. So for those individuals. Now I'm going to go through some of these chats, and some of it may be just statements and some of it may have questions, but so as a T12 complete, this person writes, how about merely hugging and kissing and giving the woman pleasure? The excitement of this can give the sensation of the orgasm. Very different from pre-injury, but no less satisfying. It's not all about penetration. Do you have any comments off of that? I mean, I think it reinforces what both of you said. It's not just the physical part, it's the emotional, the connection part, and the trust as well. Well, I think we all can agree with that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Here's another. I am a T12 complete. Is there anything you could say about not being able to ejaculate? I crave release that one gets after ejaculating. It's sometimes so frustrating to be able to just about get there, but not being able to have these release happen. We have many aids, no success. Is there a simple way to get and let it happen? Now, what do you say to this person that, it's all, he just wants the ejaculate?
Yeah. So as a male, bluntly, no, there is nothing easy out there. There's no replacing the feeling that you physically get from having an orgasm. I don't know of anything at all that can replace that feeling. It's unfortunate that, we can have a steak and you can have a prime rib or a New York strip or a filet, and you put the same seasoning on it. It's gonna taste similar, right? But there's nothing out there that can fully replace how you feel after, during or after an orgasm. Yeah. Skydiving, jumping out of an airplane, you don't get the same feeling as you do when you're doing indoor skydiving in a tunnel. It's totally different. I wish I had a better answer for individuals that can't have an orgasm or feel an orgasm. I just don't have a better answer.
Okay. Well, I just realized we're almost out of time, and I am so grateful for both Clint and Beth, man. It was an eye opener I thought I've read and known and seen enough clients to know everything. But yet I'm learning every day. And that's the beautiful part about having individuals who are experiencing this coming on to my webinars and to do this, because I know that I'm not able to give everything what others can obviously give when it comes to their personal life experience. Clint, Alana, thank you. Please,
yeah, thank you.
I hope you come and join us again sometime, because I think this topic is going to probably want to be talked about one more time down the road. And Beth, Pennsylvania, thank you for being around, and God, you've educated me so much about the other side, and thank you again. And I will be in touch. Everyone
Thank-
does listening, please make sure you fill out the evaluations at the end, refer your friends, and thank our both of our guest speakers today. And we'll talk to you soon. See you next month. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.